So today and tomorrow we will farbring. We'll schmooze. You got your wishes, Moshe. We will schmooze. No, we will farbring about the Rebbe, his Yortzeit, and Chasidim. So just a brief introduction. This coming Motzoi Shabbos, Saturday night and Sunday, is Gimel Tammuz. It's the day when the Rebbe passed away 31 years ago. A buzzword, a code word in the world of Chabad is Gimel Tammuz. So when someone says Gimel Tammuz, you know they're referring to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Yortzeit. They're probably not going to say his Yortzeit, unless they're in a public setting and in a lecture. But Gimel Tammuz just says it all. And in Chabad, it's very emphatic and emotional and deep. Why? Because the Rebbe had no children, so his passing, on one hand, is like the end of an era. But at the very same time, it's not just the continuation of an era, it's the beginning of an era. And as we say in good old English, the proof is in the pudding. What's the pudding? That since 1994, when the Rebbe passed away, on Gimel Tammuz, there's been an explosion of institutions, Chabad institutions, Chabad houses, shuls, yeshivas, schools, social organizations from Friendship Circle and things like that, way beyond anything that we had before 1994. And this isn't a theory, this is in the bank. Okay? If you take a look at the numbers of Chabad institutions till 1994, and here we are in 2025, 31 years later, there's no comparison. When I was sent by the Rebbe, my wife and I were sent in 1984 on Shlichus to be his representatives to Marin County, California. In 1985, November, I came back for the kinus, for the gathering of shluchim, and at that time it wasn't international, as far as I remember. It was just from the States. We had maybe 70, 80 rabbis, and there's a picture of it. So what I'm saying is verifiable. It's online. You can find it. So here we are today with over 6,000 people that come to an international kinnis. Granted, it's international, but I believe every state in the union has a shliach, and most countries, I don't think all, most have shluchim. In fact, I just heard this week that two young people, I don't know if they're married or single, I don't know, related to some of the other Chabad shluchim in Dubai, have planted themselves in Saudi Arabia. I mean, did you hear what I just said? They planted themselves there because they see the future. There's going to be good relations between Saudi Arabia and America and Israel. So there's going to be a lot of traveling and business there. This is their thought. So they are now doing what it says in Genesis and Bereshis, that Yehuda Shalach leGoshna. Jacob, Yaakov sent Yehuda to Goshen, and what does Rashi say? To set up a yeshiva. So that when Yaakov gets to Goshen, there should be a yeshiva already there. So these Chabadniks are planting the seeds for a Chabad house and a shul, whatever else, there. In several years, they believe that will be a place where lots of Yidden and tourists will come, and they will be able to service them. Yes, Hillel.
No, I wanted to ask if they were allowed to live there yet.
I don't know. The word what I heard was it was clandestine. So probably the answer is no. But these Chabadniks, especially if they're Bacharim, they're going to finagle their way in somehow. So my point is, what am I getting at? That the proliferation of Chabad, of the Rebbe's work, because it's all his direction. And I'm thinking about this entire week in anticipation of the yahrzeit. When you talk about a Torah organization, especially a Hasidus organization, you have to go back to the core root to understand what follows. Let me explain, and this is good for Farbrengen and very, very important. Moshe Myers, our wonderful friend and student, worked part-time, I think he told me, for Esha Torah, for one of the organizations, the Kiruv organizations, helping them raise funds.
Still do. I still do for other.
You still do. Okay.
Organizations.
Okay. So here's my point. An organization, a Kiruv organization, this one in particular, Esha Torah, was founded by Rabbi Noah Weinberg. You've heard his name. He's already passed on. Rabbi Noah Weinberg, we knew him. We knew him from the East Coast, okay? Whether it was the yeshiva. His brother was the son-in-law of Rabbi Ruderman of Ner Yisrael in Baltimore, Hillel's old stomping grounds. And I think he even had an encounter with the previous Rebbe in 1940s, 43, 44, 45, I believe. So he was known. He didn't come out of a bag, okay? He was known. But when he came to Eretz Yisrael, around the time of the 6-Day War, and there was the Baal Tshuva movement, excitement and all that, into the 70s, and he was from the leaders of the yeshiva, the leader, and made a Baal Tshuva yeshiva very successful, etc. Right? He wasn't a Rebbe. By the way, the Weinbergs come from the Slonim Chasidus, which some of you learn, right? The Siva Shalom. What's the name of the family? Weinberg.
Yeah.
So Rabbi Noah Weinberg and his brother come from that family. And now I remind myself, in my book, Chabad and Gedolim, Volume 2, I write about Rabbi Weinberg, and I believe I put in a picture of him and his brother, or one of them, as boys with payas and a long rekel, I think. A long frock.
His family was originally Hasidus. Apparently his father was
Moshe. I'm Farbrengen. Calm down. Listen, please. I'm in the middle of speaking. I'm saying exactly that. You got to listen. So, for whatever reason, and there is a reason, I don't want to go into it now, read my book and the footnotes, and over there are all the secrets. But they left Hasidism. They were Slonimer Hasidim. They came from the Slonimer dynasty, right? But that's not my point. When an individual, a rabbi, a rav, a gadol, whatever, makes an institution, it's individual. It's private in a way. It's their baby. When you talk about a Hasidus, whether it's Bostoner Hasidus that Isser is involved with, etc., or Chabad Hasidus, or Slonimer Hasidus, whatever Hasidus, or Breslov, it's not about an individual. It's about an institution called Hasidism, which begins with the Baal Shem Tov and then the Maggid of Mizrich. And as soon as you try to separate the two, it's not Hasidus anymore. And today, unfortunately, there's too much of this innovation which doesn't fall into the misgeret, to the category of Hasidism and whatever particular Hasidic group it is. So,
What are you referring to?
well, slow down, slow down, please. Not Kabbalah. I'm talking about Hasidus now. I don't need to, and I don't want to give particular examples, because in every Hasidic group, or many Hasidic groups, you could find various things, not even outrageous things, that certain people or certain places decided, and they say it and do it in the name of Hasidism, and it's not. It's your own cup of tea. Do you know who's the one in the Hasidic movement who establishes what is part of that Hasidus? The Rebbe of that group. You see? And that's the difference between Hasidism. I'm not talking about Chabad now. I'm talking about all Hasidim. Between Hasidism and non-Hasidism. Whether it's the Sephardic world, the Litvak world, the idea, and this Chevra, it's not Yutas Kislev today, but this is what really bothered the Misnagdim of old about Hasidim. This idea that we accept and we follow and we respect an individual as a special soul amongst all Jewish souls, and that his word is the word of God given to a prophet or similar to a Rebbe, that was and is, in a sense, a very heavy trip, and one that many people didn't want to accept. And I understand them. I perfectly understand them. So when you talk about a Rebbe's yahrzeit, you have to go back and say, this individual is a Rebbe of Chabad. Chabad is a branch of Hasidism. Hasidism started with the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mizrich. So you have to ask yourself, do I buy into that concept? And if you do, then you are a Chassid. If you don't, you're a great guy, and you're a Torah guy, but you're not a Chassid. And it's no problem. Not everyone has to be a Chassid. I mean, probably plenty of Lubavitchers and others will say everyone has to be a Chassid, but you know what I'm saying? It's a choice of the neshama. Do you gravitate to Hasidism? And that's why. I think we've discussed this, Isser and I, and maybe during our shiurim. Different people relate to different Rebbes. And you can't take that away from them. That is independence. If to Isser, his calling, he feels right now that he sees the Bosner Hasidus and the Bosner Rebbes as addressing what his neshama needs, then he's their Chassid. Someone who's a Lubavitcher Chassid, a Chabad Chassid, who sees that in the Lubavitcher Rebbes, is a Chabad Chassid. And it's not a competition, and it's not a game. It's a very serious matter. You know how serious it is? It's like choosing your wife. And probably even more. But at least, hey, there are nice women out there. Go back to when you were looking for a shidduch, right? But you found something, whether it's what they say, attraction, or what's the word they use? Not commonality. Chemistry. Thank you. Chemistry. Hey, my chemistry is different than your chemistry. So, and your chemistry is different with this woman and that woman when you were looking for a wife. right? The same as with a Rebbe, and even more so, I say. So it's not about, there's a lot of apples and a lot of oranges, and I'm going to fit in. Now, let me say for the record, and we've discussed this, but it's important. There are people, and plenty of people, that join Hasidic groups because it's apples and oranges. They feel a camaraderie. They feel good hanging out with the boys and the girls with the girls. And you know what? Today, that's fine. It's fine. It's fine to join a group, a Hasidic group, if you find nourishment there. And hopefully, you'll go beyond the chitzonius, the superficial. You'll start learning the Hasidism, the Hasidic teachings of that particular Rebbe and Rabbeim and group, and then you'll identify with it. Some try that, and at a certain point they don't identify, and they go on to another Hasidus. And that's a whole other discussion. Is that proper? Again, the question, what do you mean is it proper? This particular Rebbe, this particular Hasidic movement doesn't talk to me anymore. Why? It's my fault, but it doesn't talk to me anymore. So that's up to the individual. Again, that's my point. Clearly, we see that the individuality of a yid, of a person, the free will, never is taken away. You have a choice any time to leave, to come. Okay? This isn't a cult. And this was a mistake of the Misnagdim 250 years ago, that Hasidism is a cult. It's not a cult. You can go when you want. And the way you come is not by guru worship. It might feel sometimes like guru worship and look like guru worship, but the truth is that a Chassid, and particular in Chabad, the Chabad style Chassid, was a very deep thinker. I don't mean in philosophy. I mean in life, and made very serious commitments, even though they came at times from Hasidic stock, parents, grandparents, etc. Nevertheless, they come to it in a very serious way. And just for the record, for all those that have had children or will have grandchildren in Chabad institutions, this was and is the motto of a Chabad yeshiva, especially in the teenage, young adult years. I recall like the sun is out now here with 100 degrees anticipating here in Brooklyn today. I recall when I was in Morristown, in the Rabbinical College in Morristown, New Jersey. I got there, I think I was about 18. 18. And I was there for two plus years. And I remember clearly saying, hey, I grew up in Brooklyn. I was with the Rebbe and Chasidim and Yidden and all my life. That's all I knew. That's all I, ate and slept, right? And now I'm in this college, away from my house, away from people. When it would snow in the winter, it could be 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I wouldn't leave the building except Friday to go put on tefillin with Yidden in West Orange and South Orange. I remember that, wonderful memories, But besides that, it was the yeshiva. The mikveh was in the basement. We had a tunnel where it was under the building. That's where if I bring, I've told you about that over the years, Thursday nights till 4 or 5 in the morning with our friends, and really got into each other to become better and all that. And then we had the food, the kitchen, and we had the learning, and it was right. But at the same time, that's when I started to say, Chaim Dalfin, who are you? Where are you? You're a chassid. What does it mean to be a chassid? And you start thinking about those things. And guess what? There were some fellows, not many, that checked out. If they didn't check out right away, checked out a little later. I remember someone, okay, he wasn't, from a Hasidic background, became Chabad. He would learn till 1, 2 in the morning. and when it came later time for Shidduchim, it wasn't going easy for various reasons. He checked out. You know, I remember someone else who's already passed on, who was bright, and he became a Litvak. He checked out. It happens. Right? So my point is, this is my point, that Hasidism doesn't remove your individuality. At the same time, if you learn Hasidus, as we've been doing, and you think Hasidus, and you're supported by each other and with each other by Farbrengens, Kiddushim, like you guys have in Eish Kodesh and in Shul in the community, it helps. It makes it geschmack, we say in Yiddish, excuse me, delightful. So all this is an introduction to the Gimel Tammuz yahrzeit of the Rebbe. And if you study the Rebbe's life, and I've done, not bragging, but I've studied his life in depth, and I've written many books about his life in various ways, not on his, not one book about him. I wrote a book called World Rebbe, which is a book about the Rebbe. I wanted to offer my contribution to Rebbe Steinsaltz and Chaim Miller and Joseph Telushkin, so I wrote a book, World's Rebbe. But besides that, and I would say that out of the three people, I'm the only one who is an insider. I'm not bragging, but they're not insiders. I'm an insider. I grew up in 770. I grew up with the Rebbe and his Chasidim. So it's a different view. Telushkin is a Manhattan brilliant writer. Good. Rabbi Steinsaltz, God bless him, is a Jerusalem genius, Talmudist, but he's out in Jerusalem. So here's Manhattan, Jerusalem. Chaim Miller was a boy who grew up in England and, became a Baal Teshuvah. It's another. So from the inside, I studied the Rebbe and see the Rebbe living with him for all my life. From when I was born till the Rebbe passed away, I lived with him and saw the way he gave us independence. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's why Hasidism and Chabad is not a cult. I don't have to convince you, but I'm just saying, it's a fresh, fluid Hasidic movement. And the Rebbe took the kernel of after the devastation in the Holocaust, and he took it on a trajectory that created what we have today, which, by the way, was a very different trajectory than, let's say, Rabbi Soloveitchik. This Shabbos, I'm speaking in Long Beach, New York, at a young Israel. And not because of Gimel Tammuz, but because it worked out for them well. So my topic is Yeshiva University and Chabad, the Rav and the Rebbe. Okay? Because there's a strong element of people from YU or supporters in that yeshiva and community. So the Rav, Rabbi Soloveitchik, was a Yid who was also born in Russia and in near Minsk, in Chaslavich in 1903. The Rebbe was born in 1902. He came from the Beis Brisk. And the Beis Brisk comes from Reb Chaim of Lozhin. Chaim Lozhin was the Talmud Muvik of the Vilna Gaon, the prodigy student of the Gaon, right? The Lithuanian Misnagdic tradition, as he himself said. And he was initially an Agudist. Agudist is Agudas Yisrael, which you would call today right-wing orthodoxy, Haredi, whatever. And after the Holocaust, he changed and he became what we call a Mizrachist, a Mizrahi, which was in America what they call the modern Orthodox. Okay, which he was so far from modern orthodoxy, but nevertheless, you kind of put him into that position. So his trajectory, yes, Moshe.
Yeah, just not to take us off topic, but it's interesting that I've always had I think it's very important always to a very fine line. What is Mizrahi? What is modern Orthodox? They get lumped together, but really
Right.
not exactly.
Right. And I don't, I'll just say you're right, but I don't want to go into it now, but I agree with you. But in America, especially in the 50s, the word on the street was Mizrahi equals modern Orthodoxy. And that was, frankly, the way I see it today, that was a bad mistake. In other words, the leaders and Rabbi Soloveitchik, in a way, didn't clarify well enough. It's not the same. I'm sure he said it, but whatever. It's like to say Chabad is Yechi. That's ridiculous. The fact that there's a lot of Yechiniks, it doesn't mean that's Chabad. Breslov is Nananach. That's not true. Breslov has a history. What?
I was just to say, like, another level connected to this point, again, I'll just say it, is that, like, here in Israel, people say, like, Dati Lumi, but sometimes people associate Dati Lumi, national religious, with, let's say, modern Orthodox. But it's not. It's like apples and oranges.
Right. Thank you for that. That's a good point. Right. Anyway, but Rabbi Soloveitchik, when he becomes Mizrahi, he supports the Mizrahi, becomes the president of Mizrahi in America, or the figurehead, right? He takes the movement in a very different way than the Rebbe takes Chabad. It's two worlds, both important worlds and good worlds, but two worlds. And the same is true if you were to study in depth the various Hasidic movements. Let's talk about the three that we mentioned before, or the four: Breslov, Chabad, Stolin, and Boston. Okay? We have here a representation of all in a way. So, if you study them, and I believe we have studied them, they're different. They're very different. But they're all Hasidim. Chabad wears their brim down, their black hat down. Shlonim, Boston, they wear Streimlich. Breslov, I think also. Right? Okay, so 1 second now. So what's the difference between Shlonim, Boston, and Breslov? Learn their Torah. It doesn't come from just a Slonimer doesn't sing much at davening. Like I went into the Slonimer shul in Meir Sharim, and I thought, frankly, I went into a cemetery. I said, this is a Hasidic movement. So I was told, that's the way they do it. They don't show lots of emotion, at least at the time when I was there, in their tefillah. Okay? Although the other day, I just saw, I think there was a Slonimer wedding, and someone got up and sang beautifully. It's online, and it was very, very touching. But also, if you listen to the music, it's on the Slonimer line. It's very Slonim. Check it out. It's online now. They just had a wedding. And I paid attention to the music, and I said, that fits into my experience of 25 years ago going into the Slonimer shul in Meir Sharim. Okay? Even though at that time when I went in, it was Kabbalah Shabbos, I believe, they weren't singing, at least when I was there. But if they were to sing, I expected such a song, right? Then you have the Breslovers singing. So my experience with Dr. Rosen, my friend in Svas, took me to the main shul over there. And after davening, they dance around and around for a long time. Another type of experience, and it's part of their Hasidus, they told me, to dance after davening. Okay? I don't know about Boston much. That we'll leave to Isser. But I'm sure there are nuances there too. So this is my point. Mark, you're listening? Because this is I'm sure, a new information for you, a lot of this stuff. Because out there in Florida, where you are, you basically see Chabadniks. You don't see really other Chasidim. But next time you'll be here in July, come out to Brooklyn, to Borough Park and Williamsburg and walk around and just go into shuls and you'll see everything that I'm talking about. Everything, much of what I'm talking about. So, I'm going to conclude and then tomorrow we'll finish the Farbrengen. I just want to say that, so just as it's important, just as there's a difference between the Mizrahi of Rabbi Soloveitchik and the Chabad of the Rebbe, within every Hasidic group there are differences. They're not all the same. Yes, there is some commonality, Hasidism, but there are important differences. So here we're going to speak tomorrow more about the Rebbe and his life. So it was important to give this introduction. Yes, Moshe.
Just real quick, connected to what we were just talking about, Rabbi Dalton, and maybe it's for tomorrow. Is there a place to talk about how today the Hasidic groups that are really, that you can trace directly to the Baal Shem Tov, Chabad, Breslov, Karlin, and I'm not sure, I feel like there's one more. I don't know what it is.
Chernobyl.
Okay. Is there a place to talk about that and their direct line to the Baal Shem Tov as opposed to other groups and their development? Just in the context of what you were just discussing.
I would say absolutely, because there's a Masorah. There's a tradition straight up. There's a tradition straight up, absolutely. In Chabad, the plethora of writing and tradition is so vast that it's all over. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You can't miss it, okay? But let's say Chernobyl, the Twerskys, right? And some of you have had relations and connection with the rabbi, different Twerskys, Rabbi Avram Twersky, who was in Bet Shemesh in Eish Kodesh, right? And Reb Michal Twersky, who's come there and I remember there in the summer, and some of you had spoken to him, etc. Right? So the Twerskys go back to Chernobyl, and they have a very strong tradition, Again, they were also almost decimated in the Holocaust, just like Chabad. They bounced back, and but they do go back. But let me say it this way: having davened for 20 years in the Square Stiebel here, a few blocks away during the week, they only recently, I mean, the last 30, 40 years, have to put together the tradition. You know, in Chabad you have it literally from the Rebbes and Rivka was the Rebbe Marash's wife. She's talking about 1870s, 1880s, who saw the previous generation going back to the Mittler Rebbe, the son of the Alter Rebbe, and communicated to the Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, the previous Rebbe, who then put it into writing, and which we have. So very, very tight and strong. And by the way, those critics, what they call hagiography, academics, what they fail to understand is that a Masorah is mouth to mouth, more than writing, because they're big. What they grind at, what they complain about is, well, there are inconsistencies in dates and this and that. Okay, we'll grant them inconsistencies because the memory is that way. But the communication of a grandchild to a grandmother to a grandchild, when both were coherent and well, can't take that away. And I think I told you once, I discussed this with an academic in Tel Aviv, Bar Ilan, and he told me 100%, especially today, it's an acceptable academic method of communication is this type of tradition, the Masorah, the oral Masorah. If you see that it's tight. So anyway, Moshe, to go back to your point, let's say in Chernobyl or in Breslov, it's a more recent phenomenon that they have documented what they see as their tradition. I'll give you an example. And it's an uncomfortable example, but it's important for this discussion. And I wrote about this in my book on Breslov in great detail. If you really want to really know all the details, you should read it there. But basically, there was a Rebbe, Reb Moshe Savraner of Savran, somewhere over there, Ukraine. And he was of the Chernobyl dynasty, and he had an issue with Reb Nosson of Breslov, the Reb Nosson, the one who brought the tradition of Reb Nachman. And not only did he have an issue, he really bothered him, and worse. Okay, and I don't want to read it if you're interested. It was ugly. Just leave it at that, right? That was not known until the last 40, 50 years. There were individuals who knew. Now, how did I know about it? Because when I was davening in the Breslov, in the Skvera Shul here, which is Chernobyl, right? In my early years, I'm not a Breslover, but respect for Reb Nachman and all of that. And I mentioned it. And one of the Chevra, a good guy, a real nice guy, he said, "Don't mention his name here." I said, "What?" And he says, I said, "I really don't know. I might have heard that you guys have an issue." But then I went home and I did my research, and I found out, what their accusations are, and to the point where they'll tear out a page, So these kind of extreme traditions, one second, Hillel, these extreme traditions are recent, okay? Now, academics like David Asaf and others have gone back and researched and discussed things of the 1800s, but that's also in the last 40, 50 years. So, go prove that the Alter Rebbe's son had a debate with a priest, right? And that, right? You could say it, but prove it. So David Asaf somehow got, records from the government, the Ukrainian government, and has his position, and Chabad has its position, including by looking carefully at the documents. But the point is that this is a recent phenomenon. Yes, Hillel.
I just want to mention, Reb Mati Twersky of Brooklyn once told me that they had the Lakutei Maharan on the shelf in Chernobyl, but it was bound up. It was sewed up.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
But I'm saying all this to address Moshe's point, about the tradition. So the answer is yes. In those Hasidic movements, groups that go back more directly, Ben Achaben, to the Baal Shem Tov, Karlin, Stolin, Rabbi Aaron Karliner, Beis Aaron, Shlomo Karliner. We have the names, we have the Svarim, right? So absolutely, there is more room to say that their traditions go more back. So in other words, like this, let's say the Karlina Stolin Chasidim shake and scream during their davening, as we've discussed. So I've asked them, right, also with the shul here, which after 60 plus years, they're finally building a building. Don't ask me why, but all of a sudden, Baruch Hashem, they've had properties for 60 plus years on 16th Avenue here in Borough Park. Yoni knows. And it was always a base medrash, and the main people, forget the two brothers who went all over the world raising money for Karlin Stolin. They've passed on, and only now they're building the building. So anyway, when I was in there years ago, I said, "Why are you guys screaming?" They say, "That's the minhag." I said, "Show it to me." Show it to me. Who decided? Tell me. So they took out a Beis Aaron, one of the knowledgeable guys, and he showed me certain things in Beis Aaron that the again, I don't know if it says it clearly, but that's the source they said for their, Kol atzmosei tamarna, all my bones should give praise to Hashem, and that means let all your bones speak loud, make movements. Okay? So, Moshe, I think I've answered your question, yes? So you got Breslov, Chernobyl, Chabad, and Stolin. But, look, if someone is looking, I want to choose a Hasidus, and I want to choose one that goes back, okay, but in a way it's shallow. And by the way, there are other Hasidic groups, maybe Boston says this too, because they do go back, way back. And then there's...
Revisionists, but not through the Maggid.
Right, not through the Maggid. And then there's Skolya, I know, argues that they have tradition from the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, but they don't, it's not a direct line. If they have a tradition, they have a tradition. You have to, there's another important thing here. And Chabad and Chernobyl were, for a while, kind of, not arguing, but had their position. And that's the Baal Shem Tov Siddur. Do you know that in our library here in Crown Heights, we have the Siddur of the Baal Shem Tov? Now, in before the Holocaust, I forget, his name was Mr. Weiner. He sold it to one of the to the Square Rebbe. But the Square Rebbe had to sell it because he didn't have what to eat. And who bought it? The previous Rebbe of Yosef Yitzchak, in a legal way. And this has been proven with documents. And he agreed. I don't know if he was still happy. He was happy because in other words, I had to do a forced sale, but really it's my Yerusha. Not my Yerusha. It came to the Square Hasidus. And the only reason I sold it to you was because I didn't have money. I needed money. Yes, Yoni.
So two things. So first of all, you just mentioned the Scully Rebbe you're talking about from Borough Park, right?
Yeah. Originally, his father, the original one, yeah.
So the Scully Rebbe, my mother, before I was born, couldn't get pregnant, and she went to the Scully Rebbe for a bracha.
Yeah, that's not him. That's not this one, but his father. He lived in Williamsburg, and he lived in Williamsburg, and he was known as a makubal, a big makubal.
So he went, and so my mom went to him. And he wrote her a letter. He wrote a letter, and he said my mom still has the letter. I think she even sent me a copy of the letter. My mom a few weeks later got pregnant. It was like a miracle. My mom said she was. That's for the second of all is that there's an acronym that I don't know in America if they'll know it, but in Israel everybody knows it. Maybe almost everybody in this group. It's called Chavak Cook. Chabad, Breslov, Kalbach, and Cook.
Okay.
And basically, you daven in a Chabad Cook shul, you have all of that. You have all of that. You have every type of Chabad, Breslov, Cook, all these different types. And it's very interesting how in Israel it's very, very popular today.
Right. I've heard about it. I do have what to say about it, but not now. And maybe for that I need a lot of l'chaim. But I am aware of it. And as I said, in 2025, Tafshin Pei Hey, if you do something and it helps you in Avodas Hashem, Gesundheit, and this is not a time, especially now in Eretz Yisrael, to put down people and be negative. You have to be positive and upbeat. But here we're having a Fabrengen. We're talking a little more pneumius. So we're discussing these things, because that nakuda. I'll end with this, Yoni. That nakuda of kind of being multi Rebbes, and that idea, is a big topic, and it's not an easy topic. but it is a phenomenon today, like you say, okay? But just be aware that it didn't fly 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. It didn't fly, okay? Then post-Holocaust, when we came out, I mean, you see so much. The Kloisenberger and the Satmar, they became, I don't want to say this, but enemies at that time. Not the Rebbes, but whatever, the Chasidim. Because hey, you were born in Satamari, which was Romania, but you survived the Holocaust and you were in a DP camp in Germany. And who was there? The Holy Tzaddik, the Kloisenberger Rebbe, and he married you. I know this from a person right here in Borough Park who was 100 years old, who told me this when he was 90 and his mind was still working. And he says, you're complaining that I'm taking him as the Masader Kedushin to officiate my marriage because I should be taking the Satmar because you were born a Satmar or you grew up with the Satmar Rebbe and why you take, right? So look how people were so, what's the word I'm looking for, so controlling, my Chassidus, not your Chassidus, things like that. So division. Now, I'm just saying that this Chabad book thought didn't work at that time. It can only work today. It didn't work then. Because then it was, what's the word, polarized. It was so polarized. What's your group? And in a way, I think it was necessary at the time. When you're establishing and you're beginning, it was necessary. Again, not machlokes, but there is something to be said. This is my shul. This is my Rav. This is my Rebbe. As time goes on, there's more room for greater acceptance. I personally still don't feel comfortable or believe that we should hop around Rebbe shopping. For that matter, hopping around Rav shopping is disastrous. You have a Rav. If the Rav doesn't know a certain area, the Rav will tell you, go to another rabbi for this area. A Rebbe too. Again, remember, Yoini, it's not a popularity contest. It's what speaks to your neshama. What speaks to your neshama. I have a cousin in Har Nof. Grew up as a Dati Lumi, right? He's very known. And I saw him just when I was at Yisrael. His beard is down to his pupik, to his belly button. Full beard. Still wearing the kippah sruga. And I said to him, so are you going to Uman this year? He says, Uman? I don't go to Uman anymore. I have a Rebbe. I go for Gimel Tammuz. I fly into the oil. This is a distant cousin of mine. I was blown away. This is a very successful person in his 60s, does a lot of chesed. People know him and all that. And I know him, I'm saying, wow. So interesting that he comes to this later in life. The answer is that's what speaks to him right now. That somehow he says he gets. I was like I didn't expect to say, like he's making, I have a Rebbe. What do I need to go to others? He was the type that would do the Chabad book shtick. Excuse me. he would do Rebbe hopping because he's good with everybody, right? But he came to a place within himself, deep within himself, that for now he finds his calling there. So this is what we're saying. Chevra, wonderful Farbrengen. Tomorrow Shem will continue. Have a great day and seid gesund. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.